the speaker today, Dr. Miriam Mujawamariya. I would like to start by saying that Dr. Miriam Mujawamariya is a lecturer at the University of Rwanda in forest ecology and biodiversity science. Dr. Miriam also holds a PhD degree from environmental sciences from the University of Gothenburg in Sweden, and her research focuses on improving mechanistic understanding of tropical forest response to climate change using Rwanda Tropical Elevation Experiment, which is abbreviated as Rwanda 3. And she is currently exploring multipurpose native tree species and their response to environmental change for research-based reforestation and conservation measures. Another thing is that Dr. Miriam is among very active researchers at the University of Rwanda, and I'd like to welcome her to share with us the results from her recent publication, which is entitled Contrasting Warming Responses of Photosynthesis in Early and Late Successional Tropical Trees. You are very welcome, Miriam. We are very happy to be with you today.
Thank you very much, Vena, for the introduction. And thank you everyone who is present to this talk. I'm really happy to talk about the result from our recently published paper in Tree Physiology Journal. Its title is Contrasting Warming Responses of Photosynthesis in Early and Late Successional Tropical Trees, as Vena introduced. And I have different co-authors who contributed to this paper. And we are a team from University of Rwanda, University of Gothenburg in Sweden, and Rwanda Agriculture Board, RAB. So I will give a brief context, and then I show you the aims and approaches that were used. I will present the results and come to conclusion at the end. So why do we focus on photosynthesis in tropical trees? First of all, tropical forests are interesting to study, given their high species diversity and their lore as they account for more than 1/3 of global terrestrial net primary productivity. However, these ecosystems, they are known to have a small temporal variation, and this variation in temperature, and this actually lead to them to have a narrow thermal niche. When we talk about photosynthesis, it's one of the two major carbon fluxes between biosphere and atmosphere. And when we have even small change in photosynthesis, that might result in a huge impact globally. However, we don't have enough data in terms of physiology and ecology, and this hints a prediction of both future carbon sink strength and changes in tree community composition in a warmer world. How will tropical forests function in a warmer and a drier future? I first want to say that many tropical forests are dominated by two main groups, which are early successional or pioneer and late successional primates. These groups are different in terms of their succession strategies, whereby early successional species, they have rapid resource uses and rapid growth, while late successional species, they're like more conservative in terms of resource use. So coming back to why and how tropical forests will function in a warmer and drier future, we have evidence from research that there is changes in tree community composition, especially in mountain rainforest. And this was studied by Duke et al. 2015 that showed that the tree community composition is changing in a mountain rainforest. Also, but et al. 2012, they showed shifting dynamics of climate functional groups. While Bennett et al. 2015 concluded that larger trees suffer most when it comes to drought. Locally here in Rwanda, we have studies conducted by Valahaman et al. And when you look at this figure, it's showing different plant species and their optimum temperature. And when we look at this, we can see that this first species, which is Carpa grandiflora and Antandrophragma exersum, which are mountain tropical climax species, they are the one that are vulnerable to warming when we compare with other species. So, photosynthesis as a physiological process responds to temperature, whereby it increases with increasing leaf temperature, it attains the maximum at optimum temperature and then to decline when temperature goes high. So the main aim of this research was to explore to what extent tropical tree species, which are having this contrasting successional strategy, how do they accumulate their net photosynthesis to temperature and seasonal droughts? And we used a multi-plantation experiment, which is called the Rwanda Tropical Elevation Experiment, or Rwanda Tree in short. We hypothesized that net photosynthesis at ambient growth temperature and non-drought conditions decrease with warming. And the decrease is caused by stomata, which grows when it gets warmer and drier, rather than change in photosynthetic capacity. The second hypothesis was that warming-induced decline in photosynthesis are more pronounced in late-successional than early-successional species. We also hypothesized that slope parameter of stomatal conductance increase with warmer growth environment. About the droughts, we had an hypothesis that net photosynthesis at growth conditions is reduced at warmer site with more pronounced drought. The approaches that were used, as I said previously, we had an experiment, an elevation gradient experiment, which is called Rwanda Tropical Elevation. And this is consists of multi-species plantations with 20 tree species that are grown at tree sites, and all the trees are soil grown. Here is the illustration of our experiment. I have a picture showing Nyungwe here on the top, because we take a plot near Nyungwe that is like a control plot. And we have, the plot is called Sigira, which is at the elevation of 2,400 meter elevation. And you have an intermediate site, which is called Rubona in the plateau, which is at elevation of 1,600 meter. And you have a low elevation and warmer sites at eastern part of Rwanda, and this is called Makera. It has an elevation of 1,300 meters. So from high elevation to low elevation, precipitation decreases and temperature increases. We have to collect seeds from high elevation and intermediate elevation, and those were planted at high elevation, intermediate, and lower elevation sites. Here is the treatments in the experiment that we have. We have rain out shelters. We also have irrigations. And for each site, we have 6 treatment, 3 replications, which makes 18 plots per each site. And each plot contains 20 tree species with a replication of 5 trees per species. The total of trees we have in the whole experiment, it is 5,400 trees. And all these trees, they include both early and late successional species. So by looking at this elevation gradient experiment, a step down into elevation represents a possible climate warming scenario. So seedlings were raised in the nursery, and after that, there were preparation of plots, and the plantations were made during December of 2017 and January of 2018. Irrigation were set up, as I said. We have constructed rain-out shelters, and we have also weather station at each site. Water treatment is to obtain comparable water input at each site, and fertilization aimed to reduce nutrient-related productivity limitations. So this is a list of the species that were explored during this study, whereby we have early successional species and late successional species with different origins. Some are Afro-mountain rainforest species, while others are Lake Victoria transitional rainforest species. During this study, we took gas exchange measurement using an instrument LICOR, portable photosynthetic system. And this is one of the sites, it's Rwanda site. Trees are now bigger than this that you see here. And this was myself together with my student during photosynthesis measurement, explaining them how to take photosynthesis measurements. The results, we have explored net photosynthesis at growth temperature, and these are successional species. These are abbreviations of different species, and the colors represent sites. The blue color represents high elevation site, which is Sigira, and control site. The pink one is the intermediate site, which is Rwanda, and the red color represents warmest site that we have in this experiment, and the lower elevation sites. So photosynthesis varied among species and also among successional groups. On my left hand, I have early successional species, and on my right hand, I have late successional species, and to the next, we have a species ficus, which is a mixed successional because it have features for both early and late succession. So we pulled together these results per successional group to see if they respond differently to warming. This is what we found. These are the results when net photosynthesis at growth temperature data are pulled at each group, successional group. The gray color represents our successional species data, while white one represents late successional. On y-axis, I have net photosynthesis at growth temperature in micromole per meter squared per second. And on x-axis, I have our 3 sites from higher elevation site Sigira to lower elevation site Rwanda. Looking at this graph, it is showing that as you go lower in elevation, as it gets warm, photosynthesis declines in late successional species, but not in early successional species. And then there is a contrasting warming responses of photosynthesis between the two groups. And this is towards the disadvantage of late successional species. From the hypothesis, we wanted to know whether these responses of net photosynthesis is associated with either stomatal conductance or photosynthetic capacity. When we explored photosynthetic capacity, we found the same kind of similar trend, since at warmest elevation, photosynthesis was really reduced in the late successional species, but not in the early successional species. However, stomatal conductance didn't show a clear pattern because it didn't show the kind of reduction at the warmer site. As you can see, it's not statistically significant. We also explored the effect of drought on net photosynthesis. And this graph here I'm having, the green color represents net photosynthesis during or before dry season, while the pink one showed net photosynthesis in the late dry season. This is showing that there was a clear decline in net photosynthesis at two warmer sites, intermediate and lowest sites, while this decline was not observed at the cooler site, which is also the control plot. This is because at the warmer sites, the effects of dry soil that led to stomatal closure and then reduced net photosynthesis, while at the cooler site, we don't have the drought. Trees didn't experience the dry season, and that's the difference that we are observing here. The decline was equal between early and late successional species. That's why we put together the data per season instead of per successional groups. So, as a conclusion, we predicted that net photosynthesis would decrease at warmer site, and this was supported by results of late successional species, but not for early successional species. The effect in late successional species was linked to decline in photosynthetic capacity rather than stomatal conductance, as was predicted, because stomatal conductance was not statistically significant. And when it comes to droughts, there is a strong reduction of net photosynthesis at the two warmer sites, but this was not the case for the cooler sites, with similar responses in both early and late succession. So these results suggest effects of climate warming on leaf level net photosynthesis under drought conditions, and even more decline during the dry season at warmer sites. And this has an effect because it leads to shift. It shows that the shift in a competitive balance in warmer world, and this shift is towards disadvantage of late successional species. This study was conducted between the three institutions, as I said, University of Rwanda, University of Gothenburg, and Rwanda Agriculture Board. I would like to thank our funders, different funders that made the study to happen. And thank you all for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Miriam, for a good presentation. I would like to welcome questions and comments, either through the chat room or by unmuting themselves and just pose a question. Is there a question or a comment? Dr. Miriam, I have one question. Maybe others will come also ask other questions. But I
Please go
want,
ahead.
yeah, I want to know also factors associated with the increase or decrease of photosynthetic capacity of a given tree species.
Thank you, Vena. That's a good question. Actually, when we talk about photosynthetic capacity, there is the one that you used here. We can talk about carboxylation capacity when we go deeper into the functioning of photosynthetic machinery. We have the enzyme Rubisco that is responsible for carboxylation. And the one that we used here was the carboxylation capacity of Rubisco. And when it gets hot, warm, there is different things that going on, not really the observed morphological effect, but physiologically when it's warm, first of all, enzyme activity increases. But when it's too warm, some enzymes are denaturated. But also, Rubisco, that is responsible for carboxylation, it's sensitive because it's a dual enzyme. It can fix both carbon dioxide or oxygen. When it gets too warm, its affinity to carbon dioxide is reduced. It means that it tends to fix more oxygen rather than carbon dioxide. And that can translate into low photosynthetic capacity.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that seems to be, and the response of Rubisco to the temperature may be different in late successional trees and pioneer species. Is that right?
Not really, Vena. I wanted to I want to highlight something here. These are two groups of trees that have different strategies.
Okay.
Why late successional species are more vulnerable to warming? It's not because of they have a different responses in terms of Rubisco activity. But remember that I said that these are successional species. They are like having high resource use. And they have high photosynthesis, high stomatal conductance, and by having high stomatal conductance, by opening more stomata, they can transpire. And by transpiring, they can cool down their leaf temperature. Meaning that the effect of temperature will not be like exacerbated in our successional species due to that capacity of leaf cooling. While for late successional, without that high ability of cooling down their leaf, their leaf will warm up, and then the effect of warming will be more on those compared to our successional species.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to welcome Olin. He has
Okay.
raised the hand.
Thanks a lot for the thanks a lot for this presentation. Okay. So I was wondering, you could see that in the response between the elevation sites, you saw that the middle one was lower than the other two. each species. So it was one of your first graphs there. It wasn't a big effect, but you could see it.
For the graph is all the species together?
Exactly, with all the species, yes.
Okay, yeah. So maybe I can share again and say something about this one.
Yeah.
Let me share screen again. So here, you mean that for some species, it could be lower at the intermediate site.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
is that? Is that due to soil, or is it due to when you were doing the measurements? Or?
No, I think the soil can be one of them because the intermediate site has a sand soil.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Because it's quite remarkable that you see this. But so when did you do this? So how long time window for these measurements?
Yeah. The measurements were like intensive campaign. We were together with one of my colleagues, Maria Whitman, and we could like have this measurement within a week for site.
For all sites?
No, for each site.
For each site, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that you need to invest quite a lot of time into it, but could it be that the differences we see there is due to that you didn't do the measurements in similar conditions?
I think the conditions, by targeting this non-drought period, for example, we ensured that we have similar conditions.
Okay.
Yeah, there were no lag time between the sites, because if we could take like 4 days each site, we could, and every time we took this measurement, we had to start with the drier sites before it gets dry, before we go to other sites. Yeah.
Yeah. So you started on the dry side and went upwards. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
To minimize that problem of the differences. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you very much. Eric Bizimana, you are welcome.
To ask just what can she recommend when it comes to the sustainability, because we are talking about trees and the future scenario possible. What can we do? What kind of trees that we can recommend for the future? For instance, in eastern province, like you see in the lower side of Kirehe district, what can we recommend in terms of trees? What can we learn in terms of afforestation campaigns, tree planting initiatives for the future scenarios?
Thank you very much, Eric. That's a good question too. Well, all these groups, early successional, late successional, they are responding differently to warming. But by responding differently to warming, some of them can be recommended. Like, for example, in agroforestry, those fast-growing species, those trees that can also handle sun-exposed conditions. But the late successional species, even though they are more vulnerable to warming, but these species, they are important in terms of carbon storage, carbon sequestration. They grow bigger, they can stay longer for storing carbon. They are also important in terms of biodiversity conservation. Some of them are important for animals, some big mammals or chimpanzees. It means that each and every tree can find a niche depending on how it responds to the change in a climate. When it comes to plantations, for example, tree plantations, where trees will stay longer, these late-successional species can be good for more carbon storage. Well, there is also some other aspect that we need to look at to choose the best species for a particular region, and the growth data, for example. And one of our colleagues in the team is working on the growth data, Bonaventure Rwanda. And if maybe sooner he will have a paper, published paper on that. I think taken together, these physiological data, growth data, can come up with good recommendations for tree plantations in different areas of Rwanda. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me see if there is someone else who has a question or a comment. Diane.
There are two hands raised. I can see Ricky Bisman and Muntoni Diane raising a hand.
Yes, Diane is welcome. Eric, maybe it's a legacy hand.
No, it's a legacy. See, it's a legacy, not mine.
Yes, Mutoni, can you speak?
Thank you so much, Renee. Thank you, Miriam, for the nice presentation. So my question is about the global warming. Global warming is a serious issue nowadays, and the temperature keeps increasing. So what is your prediction for the coming 10 years, considering the three species that you worked on in this study? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diane, for the question. Your question is about what I can predict for the coming 10 years in terms of performance of these trees, or in terms of what?
Yes, sorry, in terms of performance of these trees regarding the photosynthesis differences that we are seeing in different regions here in Rwanda.
Great. So, yeah, this was a subset of 23 species that we could start with in the experiment. And the way they responded, being different, it shows us that actually late-successional species are mostly affected by this warming. But still, as I said previously, these trees, they are very important. They're very important in different ways, in different ecosystem services that they provide. Starting from the animals that are relying on them, also going to the carbon that is stored in them. We really need to take action, and not one institution, not one way, but like together as a community, see what we can do to protect or let them still survive in the coming years. When we talk about the increase in temperature, it is still increasing. When we talk about the rainfall patterns that we can even see that in Rwanda we have this hazards that are related to climate change. This is showing that climate change is there. It's not a story that we are telling to people, but climate change is there. So as a scientist, we need to think big and, of course, advocate for our ecosystems, for our nature, not only even the trees, because the trees are providing shelter for animals. Once trees will not be there, animals will not be there. They are providing different ecosystem service. Once they are no longer there, those ecosystem services will no longer be there. So I think we need to act together. There is the projection is not like I might say that it's not like promising performance of these trees, but as scientists, we need to think how we can make it promising, how these trees we can help them to still survive. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Miriam. Yeah, you are right. As I can see, the decline of trees exacerbate climate change, and climate change make late-successional trees vulnerable, which is a problem. Yeah, trees are suffering, and trees are among the solutions of climate change. Maybe increasing effort in reforestation can be a good way, and as you said, all of us have something to do about that. Uh, Let me see if there is someone else who is wanting to comment or ask a question.
Zena,
Yes,
may I ask you one question to Dr. Miriam?
yes, you are welcome.
After her research, when you are doing a research, you see the gap topics that someone can be interested on. After his work, what is the gaps or what kind of idea she has or she can recommend to other researcher after doing her works today? This one, what the kind of recommendation in terms of research topics, or where is the gaps in terms of because it's talking about photosynthesis and I like so much her works and I appreciate so much. What kind of recommendation she can give to other researchers or some other people in terms of research gaps or such items?
Thank you very much, Eric. Let me answer these questions in line or in the field of forestry. This research is exploring the responses of different trees to climate change. And the purpose is to come up with recommendations of which trees better fit to which climatic conditions. So my recommendation or my advice, based on the result that we are having and the continuous work that is being done by our group, I think it's good as researchers, but also as implementers, to make a kind of selection, because when I talk about kind of selection, it's a good selection of the trees that will fit better in their region. Most of the time, projects are being implemented and they are there. During the implementation, there is no care about the selection of which trees that might perform where. And this might lead to a failure. Eric, you asked about how we can recommend for the Eastern Province forest plantations effort that are being there. That's good to have an effort to reforest or to afforest an area, because this is contributing to the issue of, to tackle the issue of climate change that we are talking about. My recommendation is to have a better selection of which trees to be planted where. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, any other question or comment?
But Vena,
Mm-hmm.
I think that recommendation is what you're asking for. Coming up with a list that can work well within a given topographic area.
Yes.
She worked on some species, but we are asking ourselves, what is the contribution of the community? Which species do we have to consider when we are deforesting or when we are planting trees in a given area? Because we've been seeing different trees, but like us or other communities who don't have any knowledge about these tree species, how they perform well or not in a given places. What is like the checklist? What is the list that can come up from this study that can help the communities, what can help the different implementers to be to give us or to contribute against this climate change problem that we are facing.
Yeah, Diane, exactly. That's was they finished the studies about physiology, and as I said, we have growth data. It's good that we combine physiological data. We have here in my study, it was 18 tree species, and if we come up with this growth data, we can recommend based on the physiology of the tree and the growth data which trees to perform where. And I hope the growth data is soon to come. Maybe if Bonaventure is around, he can let us know if he has nearly a paper to come out.
Yes, thank you very much. About the list of species, we do have another type of paper which is pending, but it includes more than 103 species, as we said, which trees and where to plant. And so the list she's asking is already established. We very soon published a list of 144 tree species across different regions of the country. And so very soon we will have additional list, a part of 20 included in the experiment. There are other lists we studied based on literatures. Thank you.
So Diane, are you now happy?
Thank you.
Okay, good. Because this is a group of different people working on different aspects. Of course, physiology data are needed. They are the one that explaining all those morphological features that you can see, or the morphological responses as a growth, as whatever. And we combined different data to come up with a better selection of the trees to different regions of our country, and even for the whole region, not only for Rwanda, but for the whole region.
Yeah.
So I can see a question from the charts. Eric is asking, how do these data differ from native to exotic tree species? So,
if you allow, I can say that we are now focusing on the native tree species. Those 100 and something are all native, but from different part of the country, from the east, central, and the high altitude. We are now, we can find other source of trees, including the exotic ones, but now in our research we are focusing on native tree species. But I'm a researcher in forestry. If someone is interested on exotic tree species, you are welcome. I can find everything you want. depending where you want to plant, as Dr. Miriam said.
Yes, Bonaventure, I want to add on because when we talk about the selection of trees that we are interested in, there is a reason why we are interested in native tree species. Why? Because we want to promote biodiversity conservation. We want to promote ecosystem services. There are a number of problems that were linked to these exotic species. And that's why by promoting biodiversity, if we wanted to go for combating climate change while promoting biodiversity, while protecting the environment, we have an interest in native trees rather than exotic ones.
That's great. Yeah. I think everyone here is satisfied. If no one else is going to speak, I am wanting to close the seminar by here. But first of all, I'd like to greatly thank you all for coming to this seminar. And thank you, Dr. Miriam, for speaking to us. And a big congratulations to you and your team because you are very active in research and contributing to science in Rwanda. Also, you are informing the practice of especially restoration, which is a good way of combating climate change. Thank you very much. See you again next week for another seminar. We will meet again at 3 p.m. as usual. See you. There is one last question from the chat room. Yeah, before you go, I want to know if all native tree species are resistant to climate change. Yeah, maybe you can you can respond to that before we leave.
So, thank you very much. Being native itself, it means that they are originating to that that area, and we didn't say that native trees are resistant to climate change, but they help us to become resilient to climate change. For example, what am I saying here? We have noticed problems related to land degradation, soil degradations, pest and disease attraction on the side of exotic species. And if we look at the native ones, they are not associated with such problems. And of course, when it comes to biodiversity, they are mostly associated with a higher diversity in terms of animals and plants. This is meaning that native trees are a tool that we can use when we are making ecosystem restoration, when we are making afforestation or reforestation to better tackle the effect of climate change. Are you happy or satisfied? Dushime Angelo? Is Angelo still online?
I assume.
Okay. Yeah, he said he got a point. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Bye once again. See you next week. We stay in touch.
Thank you all for coming.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.